once you've completed that widening, be it 10, 15 years from now, then you look at expanding the parks.
$70 million from last year to this year, but we have a $1 billion backlog in transportation infrastructure projects. We have another $1 billion backlog in school infrastructure projects. You can take that $70 million. I mean, the costs of providing the services we still have are increasing as well. So if you're conservative and say about 50 million of that isn't going to providing the same level of services we have right now, if you think that level of services is sufficient, you take that $50 million, it's going to take 40 years as a pay-as-you-go basis to deal with the infrastructure needs that we currently have. I don't think we should be cutting taxes until every school has enough teachers to lower the class sizes, to have schools that aren't overcrowded, until every school has water fountains you can drink out of that doesn't have lead pipes with water contaminating the water, until you have teachers and public safety officials that have competitive salaries when compared to jurisdictions around us. And so, I mean, we need to hire more teachers, we need to build more schools. In order to do that, we have to protect the revenue streams that we still have. That's just math.
Sir. Mr. Boniface, how would you help reduce school size or class size in Anne Arundel County?
So, I mean, one of the things, fighting for Crofton High School, I knew it would reduce the number of students in both Arundel, which is at 105% capacity, and South River, which has 2,200 something. They're about 100% capacity right now. We need to add schools, obviously, and if we add schools, one way we can do that is when they build these new developments, have the developers put in an elementary school. They can do that. They offered one up in Crofton, and the Board of Ed rejected it. It was Evergreen Elementary. They said, we'll build this, we want to build this community, we'll build this elementary school that'll help out with some of the capacity issues. And the Board of Ed said, no, we don't want that because we don't want that development. Well, they waited 6 years. There's a 6-year waiver requirement here that if they want to do a development, they just have to wait 6 years, and then they can build anyways. And that's what they did. They waited 6 years, didn't have to build the elementary school, saved themselves $32 million, and they built that 2,000 homes anyways. So we need to make sure that they can help out building some that work with them. And a lot of these developers, I've talked to some of them, and they said, we're willing to do that kind of stuff. That's how Broadneck got an addition on their school. The developer paid for it. So we can look at some of those expansions, and hopefully once the schools open up and we spread out and we redistrict some of the schools that spread out. I mean, we have some schools like Chesapeake High School that have 400 empty seats in them. Old Mill has a few hundred empty seats in them. And then we have other ones that are busting the seams. So if we can redistrict and spread around the students to where they need to be to properly fill the schools, then we can look at reducing class sizes by adding teachers. I think that's pretty much a simple way to put it. Want to reduce class sizes, add teachers.
Thank you. Ms. Hare, how would you help reduce school size or class sizes in Anne Arundel County?
So I am also going to say that of course you need more schools and more teachers. That is true. However, I do differ with Mr. Kitchen. I think we can both increase teachers and get new schools while actually giving a property tax cut. Our school budget currently is over 50% of the county budget. It's an enormous amount of money. I believe that there are some places in the school budget where we can recognize some efficiencies that would help offset that. For example, there is currently a procurement office for the county and a separate procurement office for the school system. I don't understand why the same procurement office can't buy the same paper clips. It doesn't make any sense to me, and I think that there are a fair number of areas like that where we can recognize savings on an annual basis that over time you put that towards the purchase of new land, you put that towards the construction of new schools. Those things can certainly add up. Efficiency is huge. We do this in our own household budgets. We should make sure that the county does it with its budget. I think that having the elected school board will actually be helpful in that sense. I think that we need to work closely with the school board, with the elected school officials to make sure that they are really using that money wisely. I do believe, and this is actually done in several places in Virginia, before a developer can build any kind of development, they have to provide the necessary infrastructure. It can be schools, it can be widening of certain roads, it can be any number of things, but it's commonly done there. It seems to work, and I do think that that is an avenue that we could look at here, particularly given the 6-year wait period, where if they're going to be able to do it, let's make sure they do it properly with the proper infrastructure.
Yeah. Next round, Mr. Boniface will start. Of the 6 themes identified by the Envision Mayo plan, and they're posted there on the board, which one or two do you think deserves the highest priority?
I think transportation and infrastructure is definitely high on the list, and I think that goes down to community quality of life as well. I think you want to have a nice place to go home to. You want to be able to get home and not sit in traffic all the time. You want to be able to have roads that aren't having sinkholes pop up every time it rains, or just if somebody has an accident, you can't get home and you're stuck in a parking lot until 4 a.m. until the road opens back up. So those are very important things that go together to your quality of life, and I think your quality of life is very important. That's why most of you live here, because it's a wonderful place. You come down. I know Jessica and I probably have been knocking on doors down here in James too, meeting everybody down here, and one thing you really notice the difference from where I live in Crofton is it's so quiet. It's you hear birds chirping, deer running around. It's just a neat environment. Dogs barking. The quality of life down here is wonderful, and those I think are what I would see as the top two. But every one of those is important.
Thank you. Ms. Hare, of the 6 themes identified by the Envision Mayo plan, which one or two do you think has the highest priority?
I will go with transportation and infrastructure along with the development and growth, because I think if we can fix those two or address those two, several others will start to resolve themselves, including the health and safety and the community/quality of life. As I mentioned before, the transportation and infrastructure, 214, Peninsula is one road in, one road out, and it's one lane each direction. It makes it darn near impossible in an emergency situation. Yes, it is a state road, but the county has the opportunity to advocate with the state for its top 10 projects that it would like funded by the state. And my initiative is to get the 214 road at the top of that list so that we get funding from the state to make that happen. If we can do that and widen that road and make a passage for bikes and then ambulances, fire trucks, whatever needs to come, that will obviously help not only with the transportation piece of it, but with health and safety. A minute or two in an ambulance can make an enormous difference. From the development and growth, I mentioned that I believe development should only occur when it is supported by the necessary infrastructure and rooted in the improvement of the quality of life of the residents. The word that was used last week, I believe, in the Envision Mayo planning session or presentation session was balance. I think it's an excellent word for it. I think that is definitely the goal we should strive to use, and I think that the county needs to use this in its general development plan. I think it is critical to have someone on the council who has the engineering background to say, if you put this development here, here's what's going to happen a mile down the road, right? We've done this, we've looked at this, we know we need this kind of stormwater management, we don't have it there yet. And I bring that voice to the council, and I think, again, if we can get the development and growth piece and the transportation and infrastructure, some of the others will follow.
Thank you. Mr. Kitchen, of the 6 themes identified by the Envision Mayo plan, which one or two do you think has the highest priority?
So I'm going to follow a similar logical process as Jessica just did. So when I look at them, I would say development and growth in the environment, because I think if we do the two of those, then a lot of the other ones will take care of themselves as well, or we'll be better off. So with growth and development, if we're managing it, if it is balanced, then we're not going to be building when we don't have the appropriate infrastructure. If we're doing development correctly and we're actually planning it and it's smart development, then it's not going to have as many negative consequences on the environment or on the quality of life, on the health and safety. We need state resources to really fix some of the problems on 214, right? It's a state highway, we all know that. And so we're talking about how do you attract state money? If I were at the state, there is no way I'd be putting a ton of money into traffic infrastructure in Anne Arundel County. So why would they dig us out of a hole when they know we're going to build ourselves right into another one? Like, if we can really fix the development and growth problem, then after we fix it, I think we can go to the state and be like, hey, we're not going to grow ourselves into another problem. We fixed that process. Please invest in our roads, and we're not going to let them get into the same kind of state as they are now. And again, and if we're really looking at protecting our environment, at curbing that stormwater runoff, at protecting our trees, I think the environment is one of the biggest things that goes to our quality of life, and that goes to the character of this community on this peninsula, as well as to the health and safety. Two of the big groups in the county that work on those are both the Sierra Club and the League of Conservation Voters. And I was proud that I was endorsed by both of them because they sat down and we talked, and they think I would be the best advocate for both of those areas on the county council. And that if you help me flip this seat, I think we will have a strong majority on the council that will really focus on getting growth and development under control and conserving the environment that we have.
Thank you. For the next round, Ms. Hare, you'll have the first response. If elected to the council, what would you do to improve the quantity and quality of public input into the county government processes?
So possibly the biggest issue on this, and it goes directly to development, is the way variances are granted. Currently, you submit for your variance, and there is a hearings officer who makes that determination. We certainly need more public input prior to that happening. Same thing with modifications. They get submitted to the county, and often it is unclear when they'll be granted, whether they'll be granted, etc. And sometimes the public meeting comes too late. We've seen this in a couple of instances so far, actually recently, even in Crofton and in other areas. So I believe we need to expand the notice requirements, and we need to move up the time for public hearing and make sure that before variances are granted, there is a public hearing.
Thank you. Mr. Kitchen, if you are elected to the council, what would you do to improve the quantity and quality of public input on the county government processes?
So there's a handful of things that we can do. I do think we need to expand notice requirements to a wider radius from where they are. I think we need to, the county government, it should be illegal to waive a community meeting. We did just have a community meeting waived in Crofton, and I think that's a travesty. It's happened in Shadyside. Like, it should be illegal. Like, there should be no option for the county to waive a required community meeting. It is bizarre to me that that has ever happened, and it happens quite a lot. If you get in there and look at the modifications that have been granted. So that just needs to be completely done away with. A lot of it, we can do things. We need to make it easier to gain standing, like expand standing to the Board of Appeals to like the general federal definition of what standing is, so that more people, when they're like, hey, we're going to be negatively affected by that development, they actually have a venue to go and to make appeals before the Board of Appeals. But we can do all that. We also need someone to adequately enforce those rules, and none of us can do that, which is why you all need to vote for Stuart Pittman for county executive, because you need an executive willing to enforce the laws that we have, and I don't think the current one has done a good job with that at all. Constituent services will be a big part of it as well. I want to have 2 town halls a month, different places throughout the county, where you can come to a public space and we can go over the variances that are pending, the modifications pending, the developments that are pending in your communities. That's something I've talked about with my wife and my kids about, and we've committed already to doing that if I get elected. And also, it just needs to be easier to come up and actually testify at the county council. It's hard. It's in Annapolis on Monday nights. You show up, you have 2 minutes. I have 2 little kids. It's like you don't see many parents who've done kids at the county council testifying. We need to have childcare at Calvert Street, honestly, to get young people involved in the process. Like, come and testify on a bill affecting your community. We'll watch your kids while you do it. We'll help them with their homework. We'll serve you coffee while you wait. Like, please come and tell us what you want to know. Right now, it's a very uninviting situation. There's a lot we can do to fix that.
Thank you. Mr. Boniface, if elected to the county council, what would you do to improve the quantity and quality of public input in the county government processes?
I think I would do kind of what's being done now with by your current councilman Jerry Walker. You pick up the phone, you call him, he answers you. You tag him on Facebook if you have a problem, he answers you. If he doesn't answer you right away, he gets back to you, and then he says, by the way, I called this person at BG&E. They will be coming down to fix that. I called Public Works. They're going to be coming to fix that. I called this person. They're going to be coming to fix that. And I know I see it all the time in Crofton. I know I've knocked on a lot of doors, and I've talked to people, and when I ask them what are the issues you have, and they tell me, I turn around, I reach out to Jerry Walker, and I say, hey, Jerry, this person has this issue on this street. the apron to their driveways is all cracked. The county's told them they can't fix it. He says, let me get on that. He gets on it. He comes back and says, Jonathan, call that person up and tell them it's going to be fixed this summer. They're coming out tomorrow to inspect it, or they came out yesterday and inspected, and it needs to be done, and they agree it's going to be done. So it's getting things done, and that's what you need. You need a county councilman that's going to be there for you when you pick up the phone and you call them. That's going to get back to you when you pick up the phone and call them. And I mean, I think that is the best input you can have. You hear of a problem, say, oh my gosh, what? They're building what? Give them a call or shoot them an email. For me, if you elect me, I mean, it's going to be my full-time job. I'm going to be there for you, and that's what I'm going to be doing. And we'll have a legislative aide that'll be there for you. And I mean, it's quite simple. Just, I think that will greatly improve the quality and the quantity of the input you get into the process.
Thank you. For the next round, the question will start with Mr. Kitchen. Of all the things that are currently being done to address the heroin and opioid epidemic in Anne Arundel County, what would you recommend that is not being done?
I think we need to invest more in actually having the beds, the recovery beds, like the facilities in our county for people to recover in. And there are more coming in this plan, but they're not adequate. I think we need that. So that needs to be part of our capital program, is building those in communities that are largely affected by the opioid crisis. I think that is one of the big things. Safe Stations is a great program where people can show up to our fire stations and police stations, but we need extra staffing for it. When an addict shows up to a fire station and they have a problem, it basically takes a medic unit out of service the entire time that addict is at that station. And if they get an emergency call with someone in cardiac arrest, like down in Bayonne, they're not going to be able to come legally because they have that person there. So we need to work on staffing it. It is a great program. For it to get better, like we need to invest more money in the actual people to make it flow where it doesn't then disrupt the other emergency medical services we have. And so I would say building more beds, which is going to take capital investments, and then properly staffing safe stations so that it works better for our communities and doesn't disrupt services.
Thank you. Mr. Boniface, of all the things that are being done currently to address the heroin and opioid epidemic in Anne Arundel County, what would you recommend that is not being done?
Well, one of the things I'm a community volunteer leader with the American Red Cross, and one of the things I brought to the county executive, actually I was speaking to somebody else and he overheard it. He reached out to me and he said, let's do a pilot program to teach more people about Narcan. We at the Red Cross, we do CPR training, AED training, first aid. Let's do Narcan as well to try to save some of these addicts. But really, prevention is the key. Everything we're doing right now is reactive. We need to find more ways to prevent it from starting. And that, unfortunately, has to start with our youth. We have to get out there. And one of the things I think our county executive's done that's fantastic is bringing back the DARE program. A lot of people said, oh, it didn't work. It didn't work. Well, the heroin epidemic wasn't quite that bad back then. And it's gotten worse. And it just keeps getting worse. So we need to get in there and tell these kids, these are the consequences. The Not My Child event that the county's doing right now is fantastic. It gets in the schools and it tells these kids, this is what's going to happen to you if you start doing these drugs. And it's a downhill spiral. Once they do it that first time, you've pretty much lost them. And so we need more education for the kids. Find ways, and one of the ways to do that is to keep them busy. So community centers, somebody reached out to me today and said, hey, we should put a YMCA in the Old Giant here in Edgewater and have a place where the kids can go after school. They can all, work out, play together, play basketball, do all sorts of different activities. And I think that, the giving them places to go where they can keep busy, instead of having idle hands and getting into, don't have any hope or don't have any friends, or they all just start getting into trouble. Keep them busy. And, a lot of times if you keep them busy, they won't turn to drugs. So,
thank you. Ms. Hare, of all the things that are currently being done to address the heroin and opioid epidemic in Anne Arundel County, what would you propose that is not currently being done?
So we've actually done a fair amount of work with this on the Commission for Women. We've all been Narcan trained. We have done events for Not My Child and whatnot. And we've worked with the Chrysalis House. And the one thing, having worked with the Chrysalis House, that I've seen is a significant lack countywide of help for recovering addicts for things like career advice, resume writing, getting a GED, things that will actually help them take their life and move it forward. The Safe Stations program is fantastic, but of course, you get someone in recovery and then what happens? We really need to go a step further and address whatever is next. And so one way to do that is, we get community groups and whatnot to help out. GED training and helping to work on resumes, etc. The Chrysalis House even allows young children to come there with a mom who has had a problem, and that really makes it easier for her to kind of get back on the path because she can work on herself and have her children there with her, and they teach things like cooking and cleaning and basic needs of children and things like that. And I really think it's that sort of holistic approach that we need to do more of in the
The first person for this question will be Mr. Boniface. What was your motivation or inspiration for running for office?
This one's pretty easy. Like I said, I came from a Navy family. My dad went to Naval Academy. My uncle, my grandfather, my other grandfather was a 30-year Navy pilot. For me, this is a way for me to serve my country. I didn't go in the military. My younger brother is serving right now. He's just flying back right now from a war zone. My sister went in the Navy as a nurse. My brother's in the Army. So for me, this is my way to serve my country, and in this case, my county, and to serve all you good people. I found that when I was fighting for Crofton High School, and I was starting dad's programs at the elementary school when my kids were in elementary school, and I run a mentoring program at the middle school up in Crofton, I realized I'm making a difference. And sometimes it's just, it's a fantastic thing to be able to make a difference, and you get addicted to it, and you want to keep making a difference. And that's kind of what I want to do. I want to keep making a difference in Anne Arundel County, and that's what's driving me to run. And I'd be honored to represent you all. And one thing that I will bring with me is honor, commitment, and integrity. It's what I was raised with, and that's what I would bring to the county council. And stand up to the powers that be that want to do things on their own agendas and not that are hurting the people that we represent.
Ms. Hare, what was your motivation or inspiration to run for public office?
So I truly believe in public service. I have volunteered throughout my life. I actually, at 16, I went down with Amigos de las Americas down to Honduras for the summer. I'm impressed that my parents even let me go because we had no running water, no electricity, no anything, and I just went down there for the summer and we did Hurricane Mitch relief. And it was incredible. It was possibly one of the most amazing experiences of my life, and it led me to really want to give back to every community that you live in. I want to show my kids that they should leave a lasting impression, they should fight for their own community, and they should do everything in their power to make their community the best place to live and work. And that is why I would like to be your next representative, because I believe that particularly now with the general development plan coming up, this is an area where I could really be of significant help and really improve and continue to improve the quality of life for all of our residents.
Mr. Kitchen, what was your motivation or inspiration to run for public office?
So on a large scale, there were two things. One, I think our government's broken. I think that's true at every level of government right now. It's outstandingly clear at the federal level. I think it's also clear at the state and the local level that our government is just not working and is not responsive to people the way it was intended to be. I think we also have lost the ability to really engage in productive public discourse that does not spell good things for the future of our country, our state, and our county. However, I think the solution to both of those has to start locally. About 80% of the county's budget is schools and public safety. If we cannot come together around the ideals of having good schools, safe communities, and a healthy environment, I'm not sure what we're going to find out there that we can all cooperate on. So I think a lot of the fixes largely to the political process in this country has to start at the local level of government. My more local motivation, it's a little bit more selfish, but the morning my wife and I were sitting in our living room being like, we're going to take the jump and actually do this. There were two things we talked about. One was traffic. I grew up in Crofton, right? I grew up in traffic. I grew up on Route 3. I grew up in traffic. But I grew up in Crofton, learned how to drive in Crofton. My daughter's 8. In 8 years, I'm not sure I'm willing to teach her how to drive in my own community. Like, I'm going to have to take her on a camping trip to West Virginia, take her out and teach her how to drive. I'm not happy about that. And then second was overcrowded classrooms. My daughter was in first grade last year. She had 29 other kids in her classroom. And I don't care how good the teacher is. She had a really good one last year. But you just cannot be your best self as a teacher when you have 29 kids there. When you have 30 kids in the class. You can't do your best as a student. You can't learn at your best when you have overcrowded schools. You know, our county executive has said, you know, his goal, long term, is to get all class sizes down to 30. That's just the wrong goal. That is not sufficient. And so my local motivations were literally traffic and overcrowded schools. And my wife and I decided that was enough for us to jump in the race and do this.
Thank you. Ms. Harry? Ms. Harry, you'll have the first response on this question. Mental health in public schools is an issue many people don't know how to deal with, and many schools do not appear to take seriously. What would your plan be for addressing mental health issues in the schools?
I've actually talked to my older sister about this a lot because she is a psychologist and she works in New Jersey in Camden County with a lot of the youth there. And I've had a lot of heart-to-hearts with her about how are we missing this in schools. And it is, to some extent, a game of numbers. You need more counselors who are trained and can recognize this. A teacher with 30 kids in a classroom may not be able to see that on their own. I do believe we need more counselors in the school. I also think, although this is not catching the mental illness on the front end, I believe we need a school resource officer in every single elementary, middle, and high school because I think that they can be incredibly effective at stopping harm before it gets out of control. But ultimately, I mean, as far as I can understand, we need additional counselors.
Thank you. Mr. Boniface, Mr. Kitchen. Mental health issues in public schools is an issue many people don't know how to deal with, and the schools do not appear to take seriously. What is your plan for addressing the mental health issues in public schools?
Well, first of all, I would say I do think schools and educators take it seriously. I don't think the county executive does. And there's an issue there. The school system has asked for more counselors. They have asked for more psychologists. They have asked for more social workers. And those requests have fallen on deaf ears. We got a little bit more back with the supplemental budget, but nothing what was asked for. Our ratios are awful. I think the average for the county is about, you have one counselor for every 650 students. At my daughter's elementary school, there's one counselor for 750 students, and the counselor is a testing coordinator. So like how much time are they spending counseling versus are they spending testing? You have to have a balanced approach. Like you do need some more security in schools for sure, but it also has to be balanced with a focus on providing those services. And it's absolutely not the schools, and it's absolutely not the teachers that are ignoring that. The school system has asked for the money. We need to be willing to fund it. The county executive found $15 million for enhanced security, but couldn't fund the $3 million that was requested for counselors, psychologists, and social workers. I think that's just wrong priorities at the top. And again, I think this is one of the ways where we need to structurally change what the county council can do as being a check on the county executive. And we need to amend the charter, and we need to say that we can, actually add to the budget. Right now, it says that we can only cut. We can cut things. You can't move things around unless it deals with the supplemental budget is open, and then you can. But I think there's things we could do to give the county council more of a voice to advocate for those things that the schools and the teachers are already asking for. But we need more of a balance. The state legislature did just pass a law that I think within 2 years requires a school resource officer at every school, elementary, middle, and high. And so that is in the works, which is really, really good. So that's coming, but we need to balance that with a focus on mental health and a willingness to fund those positions.
Thanks. Mr. Boniface. Mental health in public schools is an issue many people don't know how to deal with, and schools do not appear to take seriously. What would your plan be to address the mental health issues in public schools?
I think a lot of that planning has to come from the Board of Ed. I think they need to identify the problems, and as a county councilman, we look to fund that, and we need to be able to trust them that they know what's best for the school system. And I don't think as a county councilman, you're going to be telling them what is best. So we do have to look and weigh the priorities. And like James said, when they ask for more counselors or school psychiatrists and psychologists, we need to be able to fund that. And I think that's as a county councilman, that's one of the things. And that's one of the areas we can add funding to. If the Board of Education requested it, and the county executive pulled it out, we can add that back in for the Board of Ed. That's the only part of the budget we can add to. So I think that's where, as a councilman, where we come in. 5 priorities for roads here in Anne Arundel County. The Mayo 214 was from Muddy Creek all the way to the end. It was number 5 on that list. We'll try to get that pushed done, but we have to get some of those ahead of it done too. So I would push for the widening of that before we open up all the parks. We know we can't stop the development that's coming to 630 homes here on the peninsula. Or there's legal challenges to stop those. People have property rights in the moratorium ended. But we can definitely slow the growth of the parks until we can get the funds needed to run 214. So that would be my commitment. I would be pushing for that any chance I can.
Ms. Hare, what commitment will you make to improving the infrastructure of the Mayo Peninsula?
So I started today by saying I would commit to advocate to get that 214 at the top of the list, and I will certainly do that. I will also commit to pushing for a permanent substation here on the peninsula. I think that is an important part of safety. I think that will improve health, safety, and go a long way towards helping the residents. I think on the development side, it's really making sure that we are not overdeveloping, we're not clear cutting, nonsensically everywhere, and we're not putting too much impervious surface where we don't need it. I think that's.
Thank you. Mr. Kitchen, what commitment will you make to improving the infrastructure of the Mayo Peninsula?
So the 2 biggest things I would advocate for would be, again, 214, just make it easier to get in and off. I know the Vision Mayo process talked about possibly a swing lane, but then also having the shoulders you need in order for pedestrians and bikers to move safely in and out of the peninsula. I think that's really, really important. I would also really push for burying the power lines. A lot of times when 214 shuts down, you have a tree that falls into the power lines and it shuts everything down for hours and hours. And that's ridiculous. When we have a storm in Crofton, I never lose my power because all the power lines are underground. And so that would be another thing I would really push for doing. But again, I think more than that, structurally, again, we can advocate for you, and we'll all do that as best we can. I think we need to change the structure of the county government to allow us to actually add those line items to the capital budget. As your council person, the GDP comes out. The GDP has a list of projects that need to be done in short term, near term, medium term. And if it's a short term project identified by the GDP or your small area plan, and the short term has passed, I should have the authority. Any one of us should have the authority on the county council to say, no, we're going to add money into that, and we're going to cut something else in order to make this priority, something that was identified as a priority, done. Maryland has the most powerful county executives of any state in the entire nation. And I think we can do a little bit to change that. And now is the time to do it. It is absolutely the time. Whether you love him or hate him, Donald Trump has created a political awakening in this country. People are paying attention now. You put me on the council in 2018, I will put in some of these amendments to change the structure and change what your councilmen are allowed to do for you. And 2020 is the perfect time to have all of us show up to the polls and vote on those amendments to actually amend the charter. Because again, whether you love him or hate him, everyone's going to show up to vote in 2020. And these amendments on these kinds of development issues, they are not partisan. If everyone shows up to vote on them, they are going to pass. We have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to really structurally change some things to allow this government to work better for you, and I think we need to take that.
Thank you. The first response to this question will be from Ms. Hare. The county executive's current proposal is that small area plans be prepared after the general development plan is complete and the zoning ordinance is written. What is your position on it?
This is an area where I disagree with the county executive. I think the small area plans, absolutely, they're the most important tool we can have in forming the general development plan. I absolutely think that they need to be done first and incorporated into the general development plan and used for comprehensive rezoning. And I will tell you, he knows that I believe that.
Mr. Kitchen. County executive has proposed that small area plans be done after the GDP is completed and the zoning ordinance is written. What is your position?
Well, I think that's ridiculous for a number of reasons. But one of the things, I've seen Phil Hager way more than I would have liked to over the past few months. Like, I've been to his office, like, fighting a couple of developments in Crofton. I've seen him at budget town halls. I've seen him all over the place. And I've asked him a handful of times about that. Like, why aren't we doing the small area plans? It's ridiculous. The communities want to do these. And he was like, James, we don't have the staff to do them. Steve Shu has cut the government so much. And John Leopold before him. It's not just Shu. But we have cut the government so much. Planning and zoning has the staff that's about 50% currently of what it was when we did small area plans. And so they're like, we don't have the manpower to do that and do everything else we're doing right now because for way too long, the county government has viewed itself as the problem. And when it comes to some of these local quality of life issues, the government is not the problem. Like, the government is the venue to live out the social contract between people and a government. We need to adequately staff some of these departments so we can do better planning and we can get more community input into it. We can talk all we want about wanting to do small area plans, but if we're not willing to pay for the positions in the Office of Planning and Zoning, those small area plans are not going to be anywhere near as thorough and detailed as they were in 2001, 2002 when they were done before. So they should be done. They needed to be started a few years ago, and we need to be willing to fund the positions that they can be done right when they're done again.
Mr. Boniface. County executives proposed that small area plans be done after the GDP is completed and the zoning ordinances are written. What is your position?
I think it's ridiculous. And I went down to Southern High School to I went to a couple of the meetings for the GDP plan, and I stood up and I told him that, right? I looked right at the camera and said, this is terrible. You should not be doing the GDP before the small area plans. We had 16 small area plans that were done over the period of, I think it was 5 years, back in the late 90s and early 2000s. For here in Edgewater and Mayo, your small area plan was done in 2002. That's when it was published. It took a long time to do it, but it was valuable input that needed to be done. It's outdated in where I live in Crofton. South County, a lot hasn't changed. I've looked at their small area plan. A lot's it can still run for this next GDP. But the one up in Crofton, the one here in Edgewater, look at what's changed since 2002. So much. Every day in Crofton we have a new restaurant opening, movie theaters, hotels coming. That's just Crofton. It's all over. Edgewater, look at how much has changed since 2002. And it needs to be done before the next GDP. And I don't know what the reason is to rush it, but County Executive Shu wants to get it through, and he has promised to do it by the next one. But the next one's going to come out in 2027. So that's 25 years in between small area plans. But I'll tell you what, this document right here will be with me when I'm sitting on the county council, and I will be using for Edgewater and Mayo when comprehensive rezoning comes and general development plan goes through. Because this is a very good small area plan.
First answer to this question, Mr. Kitchen. How do you intend to foster a state of inclusivity as a member of the county council?
There's a handful of things you can do there. One, again, as a public policy scholar, you're taught every time you look at a bill, you have to identify every stakeholder group that's going to be affected by that bill. And even if they're going to be on the winning side or the losing side of that vote, you need to know who they are, how they're going to be affected, what those effects are going to be. And then you can write nuance into laws in order to help mitigate those negative effects, on the people that are not happy about the vote that's going to be had. So you have to be willing to do that. And once they see you doing that, too often in government we say you're not gonna vote the way I want on that issue. I just don't care about your opinion anymore. I'm not gonna listen to you. I'm gonna listen to the people that are happy about the way I'm voting, and those are the people I'm gonna focus on. And you really have to be focusing on all of them at the same time. There are some other things that I think we can do at the county council level. For example, when the Board of Education adopted rules that were accommodating to transgender children in our schools, the county council passed on a very party-line vote an ordinance, not an ordinance, but a resolution condemning the Board of Education for doing that. I think we need to pass a resolution reversing that and say, look, no, every child is welcome in these schools and can be included in these schools. And until we get resolutions off the books that are by definition anti-inclusive, I'm not sure we can really claim to be doing that. I think there's a lot more we can do to reach out to our immigrant communities and our Hispanic communities, and again, remove some policies that we're involved in now that we really have no business in doing, that are really creating rifts between government and people of color, and I think we can do that too.
Okay. Mr. Boniface, how do you intend to foster a state of inclusivity as a member of the county council?
Great constituent service. I think reach out. Anybody that reaches out to me, I don't care who you are, where you're from, what you do. If you reach out, you're a citizen of this county. You deserve to be represented in the best way possible, and that's I'll always give it my all for you and go to bat for you where I can.
Ms. Hare, how do you intend to foster a state of inclusivity as a member of the county council?
So the first thing on that is sort of just an open door policy. You'll see my email and phone number on my campaign literature. I answer those personally. I will respond to anyone and everyone. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. I don't care, what the initial reason is for reaching out. I respond and I will listen. I think actually part of being an attorney is that you can ask the really difficult questions, but you're able to listen to the other side and effectively hear their argument. It is dispassionate, if you will, from a policy standpoint, and that's something that we do. That's something I do every day when we're in court. You advocate zealously, but respectfully, and you have to listen because the other side may have a persuasive argument you haven't thought of. You need to work with, and these are all sort of things. I think if we can have a county council where everyone is willing to ask the tough questions, but also willing to recognize that there may be points of view they haven't thought about, we will naturally have a more inclusive council and foster that sense within the community, particularly if we all have the same open door policy where anyone can come in and voice their concerns.
The next question, Mr. Boniface will be the first to answer. What aspect of the quality of life in Anne Arundel County do you feel is most endangered, and how would you address it?
Most endangered. I think our safety. Honestly, I know just traveling around the county, I'm all over the place. People texting and driving. I get home and every time I just say a little prayer of thanks that I've made it home alive, because I'm sure, as I do, and most of you do, when you're driving around this county, you notice that car coming towards you. All of a sudden, it's coming across the yellow line, and you see this, and then they pull back in there. That happens to me so often. I'm door knocking, so I'm driving from house to house in Deal, up here in Shadyside, Edgewater, Crofton, all over Davidsonville. So I'm on these back roads and I see it. People get close to home, the first thing they want to do is text and say, "Hey, almost home. Need anything?" And in that split second, they're almost hitting me. So it terrifies me. The first thing I do is I slap my phone up onto a holder, leave it there, and it just I think that's the one thing that really, the quality of life here is safety. And I think if you don't have life, you can't really live a life. So I think that's something that we really need to address. Is the biggest threat to our quality of life.
Thank you. Ms. Hare, what aspect of the quality of life in Anne Arundel County do you feel is most endangered, and how would you address it?
This is actually more with respect to the southern half of the county than the northern half of the county, but I think that we are lacking outdoor passive recreation for time with your kids. The northern half of the county has bike trails and walking trails all over. The southern half of the county is missing a lot of that, and I think that if we could create a continuous walking/biking area, and it doesn't need to be paved, it can be hard packed and create less environmental impact. We could create an area where on Saturday morning I can say to my kids, "Let's go out for a walk, this way," and literally, a couple minutes from your house, you can get to a walking or a biking path. I think that would be an incredible addition to the southern half of the county, and would really like to see that happen.
Mr. Kitchen, what aspect of the quality of life in Anne Arundel County do you feel is most endangered, and how would you address it?
So I would say it's just having adequate public facilities, like whether those are the schools that we need, like the properly staffed police, fire departments, like the stations where they need to be, the adequate roads infrastructure. Like we don't have the adequate public facilities to facilitate as high a quality life as we should right now, and I think that is very much under threatened, and that goes right into the environment. And all that goes back to how we manage growth and development, which right now we're not doing, or at least we're not doing in a very smart way. And as we let development happen anywhere people want it to, almost anywhere people want it to, all of that is threatened and continues to be threatened. What I'll do about it is, one, go after the money. We're going to institute campaign finance reforms so that we can really end the influence that big developer money has in the political process. Second, we'll raise impact fees to 100%, so we're not financially incentivizing the overdevelopment that we don't want. We'll do a Forest Conservation Act, strengthen at the local level, that again, will make it a little bit more expensive for development to happen, so it'll naturally make development happen a little bit less, and it'll also have the trees there to act as those natural filters that will improve the environment and our quality of life. So I think we really fix it by going at the money and then going at the way we manage growth and development in the county.
Ms. Herring, you'll have the first response to this question. Do you favor requiring developers and new home builders to pay the full amount necessary to cover infrastructure, school, and other required costs associated with the development? Mr. Kitchen, do you favor requiring new developers and new home builders to pay the full amount necessary to cover infrastructure for schools and other required costs associated with development?
Yes, I've said that multiple times already. I also think that there are other areas that they should be required to cover as well. If you look at the GDP and list a whole bunch that might possibly be required, Parks and Recs are one of them, libraries was another. The environment is a big one. I think it is an atrocity that we do not have an environmental impact fee. So absolutely, we need to raise the ones that we have up to the full cost, but we also need to really look at what are the full public costs of development and what areas are we leaving out in the impact fees that we have. There's a lot we're leaving out, and we need to fix that as well.
Thank you, Mr. Boniface. Do you favor requiring developers and new home builders to pay the full amount necessary to cover infrastructure, school, and other required costs associated with their development?
Yes, and if we currently don't think that this is the adequate impact fees are being collected, we should revisit it and look. And I can't remember the last time, but I think it's been at least 9 years since they've done an overview of impact fees and whether or not. I mean, if things have changed so much that we need more impact fees or less impact fees, we should definitely study it and find out. And I think that's definitely something we should look at. But the answer to the question is definitely yes.
Mr. Kitchen, you'll have the first response on this. How would you propose to give more force to the small area plans in county development planning?
Well, first we need to have them. You need to do them before you do the GDP. That needs to be done. People often talk about how do you make the general development plan or these small area plans the weight of law. They're often talked about as guidelines without any teeth, and that the real impact comes through comprehensive rezoning. And there's a handful of things we can do. The last comprehensive rezoning process, there were councilmen that got up there and they were inserting amendments in at the very last minute where they could not be reviewed, they could not really have public comment, no one really knew what was happening, and we ended up with a comp rezoning bill that really had altered a lot from these small area plans. We need to amend the charter. Some of the ones are on there now, or have been proposed. Chris Crumbauer has put forward an amendment that would help with that process a little bit, requiring public notice for amendments, for zoning changes, for amendments to the process. But we need to do that. Again, I think we need to make it so that if the small area plans are being neglected by the county executive and the county administration, then the county councilman in those districts should have the authority to come in and have more of a say in the budgeting process when that situation is happening. So we need to give small area plans. We need to do them, and we need to give them teeth.
Mr. Boniface, how would you propose to give more force or strength to the role of small area plans in county development?
I definitely think we need. I think James is right on this. We need to do the small area plans, and I do think we need to give them a little bit more teeth. I don't know the exact degree of teeth. I mean, I don't think you can make them law, but we can get them to the point where we stick by them a lot more closely, or make it harder to change. Maybe add how many votes, a supermajority, to change some of these things. I think that would be a good step.
Ms. Hare.
I actually think this may be one area where all of us agree quite a bit on the fact that the small area plans really should have quite a bit more teeth in the county. It was actually, I think, at a Crofton candidate night, perhaps, when Mr. Schonbauer first said, hey, we should have this public hearing on the amendment, and I agree with that. I think that is an excellent idea. I think giving the community an opportunity to go to a public hearing before amendments are made like this really gives the council an idea of what the community is saying, gives the county executive an idea of what the community wants. The small area plans, I think, often, they say, oh, right, they're over there somewhere, they got put in a drawer. And I think we need to continually put them in front of everyone and say, no. And if something is going to differ from the intent of the small area plan, we need to be having public hearings and whatnot.
This will be our last question. The first answer in this one will be for Mr. Bonfils. A significant concern of the Peninsula residents is the quality and accessibility of our drinking water supply in the face of potential development. What do you know about the issue, and what steps would you take to ensure that the current residents do not lose water in the face of further development?
Well, I know the vast majority of you are on wells, and I know there's two levels. A lot of people that are in the shallower well say their water's great, and some of them that have gone deeper have said their water's not great. But then if you go on the other side of the peninsula, it's just the opposite. So I think you do have some of the shallow wells that are having saltwater intrusion, having some problems. So I think that's something that we might look at, whether or not the community wants water and sewer. I know I've currently been knocking doors in London Town. They want water. They have sewer. They want water. It's one of those things that, does the county or do the people want to pay the bill for that? Because it's very expensive to put it down there. But I definitely think we need to protect the aquifers. And I think that might be one of the ways to slow down development. There's a study going through right now that should come out this summer about the aquifers and see what the levels are. And I think we need to wait till number one, that study is published to find out exactly what plan we can use to go forward.
Ms. Hare. A significant concern of the Peninsula residents is the quality and accessibility of our drinking water supply in the face of potential development. What do you know about the issue, and what steps would you take to ensure the current residents do not lose water in the face of further development?
So I sympathize with everyone on a well, because we're on a well also, and it is constant maintenance and constant upkeep. There is a study coming out this summer. I think we need to see what the study says first and foremost. The master plan for stormwater and sewer is, I believe, every 3 years it's redone. The last one was in 2017, so in 2020 we've got a new one coming up, and this allows the county to, prioritize what projects are going where. So depending on what this study says, that gives us the opportunity to advocate to get, water and sewer here in that master plan and have it get funded on that basis. I don't know what the study will say, but that's the avenue that I would look to.
Mr. Kitchen, a significant concern for the Peninsula residents is the quality and accessibility of our drinking water supply in the face of the potential development. What do you know about the issue, and what steps would you take to ensure the current residents do not lose water in the face of further development?
Yes, so as already been mentioned a couple times, I know that we don't know enough. We don't know enough yet to be able to tell you that the aquifers are sufficient to add new wells on them. And that's one of those things that we should know that before we add any new wells for that aquifer. It's a big aquifer. Every time we build a well, it's like putting another straw in the same cup. It's all coming from the same place. We also need a more expansive view of protecting our aquifers. A lot of the recharge zones for this aquifer, the aquifer goes through the entire county, and a lot of the recharge zones where the stormwater naturally comes down and fills up the aquifers that we all use are actually in North County, and we've paved over a lot of them, which does not bode well for the long-term health of our aquifers and our water supplies. I know that now that there are some wells here that people found arsenic in them. That has been documented. that is a travesty. As we continue to not do anything about the incoming climate change, we're going to have more and more sea level rise. We're going to have more and more saltwater intrusion. That's going to affect people on these wells first. It's going to affect you all before it's going to affect me. And we need to be looking comprehensively into the future to do that. But like these reports, we asked for this report on the aquifers like 10 years ago at least, and like we're just getting one this next summer. This should be part of, like there should be a cycle. Like every 2 or 3 years, we're putting out a report on the health of our aquifer, and that report should be used as part of our adequate public facilities. You know, we do say, is there enough sewer to support this development? We need to say, like, is the aquifer healthy enough to support new developments? And we can write that into code, and we can require, you know, a continual cycle of these studies, and that really, really needs to be done. Because right now we just don't know enough. We're making these decisions blind, and that is not the way to make decisions that are in the best interest of everyone.
That's the last question we have. Before we go to closing statements, I'd like to ask everyone to take a moment to give a round of applause to our candidates for coming. The Neighbors of the Mayo Peninsula does not endorse any candidate. We believe in holding these forums to give the voters the information necessary, but of course these events are only as useful as you make them by actually going out to vote. So we encourage you to vote in the upcoming primary in the general election. This time, the candidates have 2 minutes for closing remark, and we will start with Mr. Bonds.
Okay, so like I said, I've been down here for the last 3 years, getting to know everybody down here. I mean, May 24th of 2016, I sat over in the Southern District Police Station when they started up the Neighbors of the Mayo Peninsula, and I've been to, you know, like I said, about 18 meetings of that since, and it's been a pleasure to be part of the process, and I look forward to representing you in the future. Real quick, I mean, my priorities are lower taxes, fighting the heroin and opioid epidemic, better infrastructure, more police and firefighters, and keeping South County rural. And one thing I can promise you is you always get an honest response from me. People that know me know that I'm honest. I'll tell you what I think, and we might not always agree, but I will always respect your opinion, and I will always get back to you. So, thank you very much.
Ms. Hare.
Another big thank you to all of you for actually coming out and sharing your evening with us, because I know there are probably a lot of other things you all have going on that you need to be doing on a Tuesday night, so I really appreciate that. I think I've met about half of you so far this evening. Specifically, I'd love to meet the other half before everybody leaves. I would really just like to say, all in all, I think I have a proven track record of zealous advocacy, and I have a good working relationship with the Republicans that are currently in the party. With all of the time that I have spent working and volunteering with them, I can certainly get a lot done. I think that my opinion is respected by many of the other Republicans that are currently in office, and I think that I can use that to really take your priorities and make them a reality. I would very much love to earn your support at the June 26th primary and then again in November, and I would love the opportunity to represent you all.
Mr. Kitchen.
So I just want to thank you all for coming out as well. And I think you've heard from 3 qualified candidates, 3 people who advocate for you well and do their best. And I'm running for office because just advocating in constituent services is not going to be enough to really create the change that we're all looking for right now. And what we need someone who yes, is going to advocate, yes, who's going to listen to you and be in your communities and provide constituent services, but also someone who understands local government and someone who can identify where are the issues that we need to change to just change the game. I've talked with some of the organizers of this group, and it just feels like we're always yelling. There's always something that we have to go to the council for and just like yell and scream. And wouldn't it be great if we had a county government that didn't necessitate us screaming every other Monday night, where things worked in a way that really helped us and just improved our quality of life. And I think we can get there, but we're not going to get there unless we address some of the structural issues that we have with this county government. I would love to represent you. I would love to be the person that identifies those things and helps to fix them so that we can really make government work for us like it was always intended to. So thank you again for coming tonight. I would also, if you're a Democrat, I don't have a primary, I'd still love for you to show up and vote June 26th. If you're unaffiliated or you're a Republican and you just want to vote for me, you can still register to vote for another 34 minutes. And change your party affiliation and vote for me on June 26th. No, but honestly, just thank you for being here. I would love to earn your support in November. And I look forward to spending more time with you all over the summer and into the fall.
Thank you very much.
One thing, I'm sorry, one thing before we go.
Hold on.
I want to thank Bill Schrader and the Kiwanis Club for providing this venue for us. Billy, that was much appreciated. Sorry about that. And also,